November 2nd, 2014, from NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas. It was the Philadelphia Eagles at the Houston Texans. Houston won the toss and they elected to defer, so the Eagles would take over first in this game. They would go 3-and-out on their first possession. Houston then took over with about 14 minutes left in the first, and after 5 plays, they would punt the ball. The Eagles then took over with about 11 minutes left in the first quarter. They had the ball on their own 12-yard line. And then, after bringing the ball up to the 36, it was 3rd and 3. Nick Foles hit Sproles for a 5-yard pass, and that would make it a first down on the Philadelphia 41. And then Nick Foles dropped back to pass, and he hit Jeremy Maclin for a 59-yard touchdown pass that put the Eagles up 7-0. So now Houston would take over with about 8.5 minutes left in the first. They had the ball on their own 20. Then on 3rd and 2 from their own 28, Ryan Fitzpatrick dropped back. He found DeAndre Hopkins for a 22-yard reception that brought the ball to the 50. Then on 3rd and 18 from the 42, Arian Foster picked up the first down with an 18-yard run that made it a first down in Philly territory at the 40-yard line. A couple plays later, it would be 3rd and 14, and an incomplete pass would bring out the punting unit as their drive stalled in Philadelphia territory. And so now the Eagles would take over with about 3.5 minutes left in the first quarter. They had the ball on their own 20. Nick Foles dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted by Bouye, and he took it 51 yards to the house for the pick six and the touchdown, as this game was now tied up at 7 apiece. So now the Eagles would take over with a little over 3 minutes left in the first quarter. They had the ball on their own 16, and they started driving towards midfield. They made it up to the 45, and then McCoy ran for 7 yards to bring it across midfield to the Houston 48. And so then a few plays later, though, after Nick Foles was sacked for an 11-yard loss by Merciless, Foles then was sacked again by Merciless. So on 1st and 10 from the 41, he got sacked for an 11-yard loss. And then after a 5-yard pass, on 3rd and 16, he was sacked for a 9-yard loss by Merciless. And that took Nick Foles out of the game as the first quarter came to a close with this game tied at 7 apiece. So to begin the second quarter, the Eagles would punt the ball, and now Houston would take over, but they would go 3-and-out. So now the Eagles would get the ball back, and Mark Sanchez was now under center for Philadelphia. The Eagles had the ball on their own 40. Sanchez, on his first play from scrimmage, would hit Jeremy Maclin for a 52-yard reception. There was unsportsmanlike conduct against Houston, actually against Jeremy Maclin, sorry. And so the ball was on the 23 of Houston. Sanchez then hit Sproles for a 6-yard pass, and then McCoy ran for 8 yards, and then he ran for 4 yards. So now it was 2nd and 5. Well, 2nd and goal on the Houston 5. Mark Sanchez then dropped back, and he was sacked as J.J. Watt and Simon combined to drop him for the 6-yard loss. So now that brought up 3rd and 11 on the Houston, 3rd and goal on the Houston 11. Sanchez then dropped back to pass, and he hit Matthews for the 11-yard touchdown, and the Eagles now took the lead with the score 14-7 as they were back in the lead for the second time in this game. So now Houston would get the ball, but they would go 3-and-out, so they punted it back to the Eagles. The Eagles now had it on their own 41. They got into Houston territory. And on 2nd and 5 from the 42, Sproles ran for 7 yards to bring it to the 35. So that was the first down on the Houston 35. Sanchez dropped back to pass, and he was intercepted by Roll. Roll returned it 13 yards, and so now the Texans would take over on their own 32. Fitzpatrick hit Johnson for a 9-yard pass. Foster then ran for 3 yards, and so now it was a first down on the 44. Then a penalty against Philadelphia, defensive holding, would make it a first down on the Houston 49. But then after a 5-yard loss from Blue, it was 2nd and 15 on the Houston 44. Fitzpatrick then dropped back to pass, and he found Arian Foster for a 56-yard touchdown that would tie this game up at 14 apiece. So now Houston had tied this game for the second time in this game. Now the Eagles would take over with about 4 minutes left in the first half. They had the ball on their own 20. And then after picking up 9 yards on first down with a run from McCoy, Sanchez would drop back on 2nd and 1, and he found Matthews for a 24-yard pass that brought the ball to the Houston 47. So now McCoy would run for 5 yards, and then Sanchez hit Selleck for 4 yards, and it was 3rd and 1 on the 38. Sanchez then scrambled, and he got 3 yards to pick up the first down. So now it was a first down on the Houston 35. McCoy would pick up 4. And then Sanchez ended up running for 1 on the next play, and that brought up 3rd and 5 on the 30. Sanchez then hit Ertz for a 4-yard pass, and it was now 4th and 1 on the 26. The Eagles elected to go for it, and McCoy picked up the first down, just barely. And now it was a first down on the Houston 25. And then a few plays later, it would end up being 3rd and 5. And Sanchez dropped back to pass, and J.J. Watt sacked Sanchez. And both teams would end up taking timeouts as time was expiring. And the Eagles were setting up to go for a field goal, and Houston decided to try to ice the kicker. So now, after the 2 timeouts, Cody Parkey would come out to attempt a 45-yard field goal, and it was up and it was good. And the Eagles took the lead for the 3rd time in this game, and it was now 17-14, Philadelphia over Houston, heading into the locker rooms at halftime. So now in the 3rd quarter, the Texans would start off things, and they had the ball on their own 20, and they moved the ball up towards midfield, but then their drive stalled when on 3rd and 9, Ryan Fitzpatrick was sacked by Connor Barwin, and that was for a 6-yard loss. And so on 4th and 15, the punting unit came out, and now the Eagles would take over with a little less than 11.5 minutes left in the 3rd. They would start off on their own 15. They would actually bring the ball to midfield, and they would bring it into Houston territory. But then their drive stalled on the Houston 40, and they brought the punting unit out. And so now the Texans would take over with a little less than 8 minutes left in the 3rd. They had the ball on their own 11. They would end up bringing the ball somewhat towards midfield. It was 3rd and 7 on the 34 of Houston. Fitzpatrick then hit DeAndre Hopkins on a short pass, but DeAndre Hopkins took it for 45 yards and brought the ball across midfield all the way to the edge of the red zone, as it was now a first down on the Philadelphia 21. Houston then would have 3 incomplete passes, and so now Randy Bullock would come out to attempt a 39-yard field goal. It was up, and it was no good. Wide left as Bullock missed, and the score remained 17-14, Philadelphia over Houston. So now the Eagles took over with about 4 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. They had the ball on their own 30. McCoy ran for 14 yards, and then McCoy ran for 26 yards. So Shady McCoy with a couple big runs. They then gave the ball to Polk, as Polk now ran for 22 yards on a first down from the Houston 30. And so now it was 1st and goal for the Eagles on the Houston 8, and Polk ended up taking it up the gut for 8 yards and the touchdown, and it was now 24-14 Philadelphia over Houston as they extended their lead to 10 points. So now there was about a little less than 3 minutes left in the 3rd quarter. Houston would get the ball, but they would go 3 and out, and so now the Eagles would get the ball, and they had it on their own 30. And on 3rd and 8 from the 32 of Philadelphia, Mark Sanchez would drop back to pass, and he was intercepted for the 2nd time in this game by Roll, as it was actually tipped by J.J. Watt, and Roll got the ball. And so now Houston took over, and they had the ball on the Philadelphia 38, and Ryan Fitzpatrick would end up throwing it to Blue, but he ended up losing 3 yards on the pass, and the 3rd quarter would come to a close with the ball on the Philadelphia 41, and the score, Philadelphia 24, Houston 14. So starting things off in the 4th quarter, Houston had the ball on the Philadelphia 41. It was 2nd and 13, and they would end up picking up 7 yards on a run from Blue, and then on 3rd and 6, Fitzpatrick hit DeAndre Hopkins for a 21-yard pass that gave them the first down on the Philadelphia 13. So they were primed and ready to score. But then a false start pushed them back to the 18. But then Fitzpatrick ended up picking up 8 yards on a run, as he ended up, it was supposed to be a pass, but then he just ran for it. So now it's 2nd and 7 on the Philadelphia 10. Fitzpatrick ended up dropping back, and he was intercepted, this time by Ryans. It was a crazy play. DeMeco Ryans ended up intercepting the ball, but then he fumbled the ball after intercepting the ball, and DeAndre Hopkins ended up recovering the ball. So now Houston got the ball back. So interception by Fitzpatrick as he was hit while he was throwing. Ryans gets the pick. He fumbles the ball. The ground kind of caused the fumble, but no one touched him, and DeAndre Hopkins ended up recovering. So now it was the Houston Texans ball on the Philadelphia 7. 1st and goal on the 7. After running for no gain on 1st down from Blue, then it was 2nd and goal on the 7. Fitzpatrick drops back, and he finds DeAndre Hopkins, who had come up clutch throughout this game. It was a 7-yard touchdown pass, and it was now a 3-point game with the score: Eagles 24, Texans 21. So now the Eagles would take over with a little less than 12 minutes left in this game. They had the ball on their own 20, and then a few plays after picking up the 1st down, it was 1st down on the Philadelphia 30. Sanchez hit Maclin for a 21-yard pass to bring the ball to midfield at the Houston 49. Then a few plays later, it was 2nd and 7 on the 46, and McCoy ran for 9 yards to pick up a 1st down on the Houston 37. Then on 3rd and 1 from the 28, Polk picked up the 1st down with a 3-yard run. Then on 2nd and 7 from the 22, Sanchez hit Huff for a 9-yard pass to make it a 1st down on the Houston 13. They would end up being faced with a 3rd and 4, and Sanchez hit Selleck for a 3-yard pass, which would bring up a 4th and 1, and they elected to go for it, and Polk ran for a yard. Houston ended up challenging the positioning of the ball, but it was ruled a 1st down, and the ruling stood, and so now it was 1st and goal on the 3. A false start would push back the Texans, or push back the Eagles to the 8-yard line. Then Mark Sanchez dropped back to pass, and he found Jeremy Maclin for an 8-yard touchdown, and it was now 31-21 as the Eagles pushed their lead back to 10 points. So now the Houston Texans would take over, and they had the ball on their own 6-yard line. Ryan Fitzpatrick would then end up hitting DeAndre Hopkins for an 11-yard pass, and then Fitzpatrick ran for 7 yards, and then Fitzpatrick ran for 16 yards, and then Fitzpatrick ran for 5 yards, as he just kept scrambling and scrambling and scrambling, picking up yards. So now it was 2nd and 5 on the Houston 45, and Fitzpatrick would throw a pair of incomplete passes that would bring up 4th down on the Houston 45. They needed 5 yards to keep themselves alive in this game with about 2.5 minutes left, and Ryan Fitzpatrick threw an incomplete pass, and the Houston Texans turned the ball over on downs. The Eagles would now take over with a little over 2 minutes left, and they would run the clock out, and this game would end up coming to a close after the Eagles had picked up a 1st down, and Sanchez would end up taking a pair of knees. And the final score in this one, Philadelphia 31, Houston 21. And with the victory, the Eagles are now 500 on the road, and they improve to 6-2 on the season. The Texans now drop below 500 as they are now 4-5 on the season, and they are 500 at home. But take, solace in knowing that teams so far throughout the last, 5 years, at least one team that was below 500 at this point in the season made the playoffs. So the Texans still have a chance. But in this game, Mark Sanchez was 15 for 22 for 202 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions in relief of Nick Foles, who left the game injured. I believe it was his collarbone. More news will be coming in on that before long. Nick Foles was 10 for 13 in the short time he was in the game, and he had 124 passing yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Ryan Fitzpatrick was 13 for 27. He had 203 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. The leading rusher in this game was LeSean McCoy. He had 23 carries and 117 yards. The leading receiver was Jeremy Maclin. He had 158 yards off of 6 receptions and 2 touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins had 115 yards off of 6 receptions, and he also had a touchdown. And on defense, we had some amazing performances. Mikal Kendricks had 12 tackles and a sack for the Eagles. He was the game's leading tackler. Both Merciless and Muhammad had 9 tackles for the Texans. Whitney Merciless had 2 sacks to go along with those 9 tackles. J.J. Watt had 7 tackles and 1.5 sacks. He also had a tackle for a loss. And altogether, the Texans combined for 4 sacks. Simon had that half sack. The Eagles also had 4 sacks. Connor Barwin had a sack. Graham had a sack. Bear and Allen each had half sacks. And as I said, Kendricks had that 1 sack as well. The Texans did have 3 interceptions in this game, as Roll had 2 picks and Bouye had 1. Ryans had 1 pick for the Eagles. But despite the turnovers, Philadelphia wins this game, and the final score is Eagles 31, Texans 21.